Hello crafty friends and welcome back to my channel. Today we will be creating not one but two very cute and adorable cards that would be perfect for all you animal lovers out there. I'll be using a few supplies from the latest Favorite Things release by Simon Says. Well, today I'm also participating in the Favorite Things release blog hop, and there are some really exciting prizes and giveaways. I will leave a link to my blog in the description box below, which will have all of the details. Don't forget to check it out. Now, before we get started, I would really appreciate if you could take a minute to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon so that you get notified every time I post a new video. Let us first take a look at the stamp set that I'll be using to create our cards today. I have the Round of Applause stamp set from the latest release. Now, if you love your fur babies, I would say this is the stamp that is absolutely perfect for you. Now, this is a 4 by 6-inch clear stamp which includes three little pups and three kitties, along with a paw and a trophy, celebrating the small and big victories in life. This would be perfect for a graduation card or a promotion card or just for someone who's celebrating life. We have some really fun sentiments too. We have "You deserve a round of applause," "You did it," "Congrats," "Yay, you," "I positively adore you," "Cheering for you," "You go girl." And I absolutely love the fonts on these sentiments as well. Off camera, I went ahead and stamped all of these kitties and pups and the trophy on a piece of white cardstock panel. I stamped the images using my Memento black ink. That's because I'll be using my alcohol markers to color these images. Now, when it comes to alcohol markers, I like to either use my Uhuhu markers or the Spectrum Noir Tri-Blend markers. Now, today I'll be using the Tri-Blend markers. For the pups, I decided to go with a very light shade of gray. The best part about the Tri-Blend markers are that you get the dark, medium, and light tones of the colors all in one marker. So that makes your coloring and shading a lot more easier. You don't have to find different shades of markers in the same color family. Now, this is perfect for beginner level coloring. Now, as far as shading goes, I started with a medium tone on the edge of all the pups, and using the lighter tone, I just blended all that color. So you see, my coloring here is very simple, nothing fancy at all. I repeated the same coloring technique with the kittens as well. I used golden yellow shades for the kittens with the hint of pale pink on the belly. Once all of our little fur babies were colored, I used red and gold to color in my trophy. Well, I didn't end up using the trophy, but I can surely save it for another project. Well, now this part of the video has been really sped up, but I do share all of my real-time coloring videos. Now, that's where you'll find the whole entire coloring process in actual real-time speed. Don't forget to check out the playlist where I have all those videos where I show you how I color all of these little images with some relaxing music. Once I was done with all the coloring, I cut out these images using my brother's Canon cut machine. Now, Simon's system does have coordinating dies, but I didn't have them while I was filming for this video. Also, I'm not very good at fussy cutting. So my scan and cut machine is my best friend when it comes to cutting out stamped images that does not have coordinating dies. Now that all our focal point images are ready, we will also be using some more products from the new Favorite Things release. I have the bubblegum pink glitter cardstock and the basic shapes circle die. This glitter cardstock is what I used in my previous video where I created tiny little bows for my cut front. Let us now work on our card number one, which will be the one with the puppies. Now I wanted to create a window for all of my puppies. So I have my A2 size panel and I will be choosing circles in three different sizes to cut out windows on this front panel. I will use the pink glitter cardstock as the background for all of these windows. Now, before I adhere the white panel onto the glitter cardstock, I decided to stamp my sentiment. I stamped the sentiment which says, "You deserve a round of applause," using my VersaFine Onyx black ink. Now here you'll see me using my Simon's Stamp Grid Transparency sheet to align my sentiment. This is something that I always like to have whenever I'm stamping my sentiments so that I know that the sentiments are perfectly aligned and in straight line. After I stamped my sentiment, I cut the pink glitter cardstock to be 4 by 5¼ inches, which is slightly smaller than a standard A2 size card base. I adhered my window panel onto this glitter cardstock using some liquid glue. Well, now here's another tip. Whenever you're aligning two panels together or even trying to place your A2 size card front onto your A2 size card base, always use the edge of a stamping tool or your scoring tool. This makes alignment of both these panels together a lot more easier. Well, here I'm using liquid glue, so I do have some wiggle room before both of these panels completely stick together. But this step comes really handy when you use either foam tape or double-sided tape, which is a lot more stickier and not that forgiving. I pressed both the panels firmly, making sure that both the panels are stuck together absolutely perfectly. Now it's time to adhere our little puppies, which are the focal points of this card front. Now this card is very clean and simple, so I wanted to add some pop to this card project. So I used foam tape to adhere these focal point puppies into the windows. You could also directly adhere them using liquid glue. Now whenever I'm using foam tape, I like to use my liquid glue. Like I said again, liquid glue gives some time and wiggle room until you can finally stick your panels or focal points or sentiment strips onto your card front. So here we have the front panel for card number one ready. Now before I adhere this onto my card base, I thought I would work on the second card front and then we could add both these front panels on the card bases together in the end. Now for card number two, I have the pink glitter cardstock panel which measures 3 by 4 by 5 inches. Initially, I thought I would use the leftover white circles that were cut out from the puppy card, but I was not very happy with the placement of these circles and I thought it would look very similar to the previous card project. So I decided to leave the circles aside and instead use a white strip. Not only did this strip give me some place to ground my little kittens, but also space to stamp our sentiments. I stamped the same "You deserve a round of applause" sentiment on this strip as well. I thought the sentiment was absolutely perfect for both our focal point images. Now, for this card, I used my liquid glue for the focal point images instead of foam tape. Now, like we did in our previous puppy card, you could also use foam tape here. I usually like a lot of dimension on my cards. That's the reason I use a lot of foam tape on either my focal points or my sentiment strips. If not anything, I would even pop up the whole entire panel onto my card base. But sometimes I also like an almost single layer card. These are easier to mail out and don't need any extra postage or any layer to protect those popped up embellishments or sequences or focal points and sentiment strips. So here's a look at both our panels. I love how clean and simple this turned out. Now, just like dimension, I also love adding splatters on my card fronts, but today I decided to keep this one really simple and clean. Well, what do you guys think? Should I have added any splatters on these cards? Do leave a comment down below. Now that both my panels were ready, I adhered this onto card bases using some liquid glue. Well, I would usually cut my panels to be slightly smaller than the A2 size card base because I love having that white border around my card front. I then used my Spectrum Noir glitter brush pen to add some shine and sparkle on the puppies and kittens. And using my white gel pen, I added some highlights on them too. Well, now, even though I use the same set of products for both my cards, I love how different each of them look. Now, one is a window card with just sparkle and glitter inside my window where my focal points are placed, while the other one is a very sparkly card with just a hint of white to ground our focal point images, yet so clean and simple. I love how both these cards turned out. I had so much fun creating these projects. Let me know in the comments down below which one is your favorite. Are you a cat person or a dog person? All the supplies that I used in today's video will be found linked in the description box below. Please note that all of these links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Also, don't forget to check out my blog post for some exciting prizes and giveaways by Simon Stamp as part of the latest Favorite Things release blog hop. Thank you for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hello, crafty friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today, we will be creating a very clean and simple card with lots of die cut pieces and a letterpress sentiment strip. We also have a fun and beautiful embossed background. With varying shades of pinks paired with a stark white background, I have a very beautiful and elegant card design for you guys today. Before we take a look at the products and the techniques used, I would really appreciate if you could take a minute to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon so that you get notified every time I post a new video. I'm using the Beast Heart Etch die, which is part of the Just Saying collection by Kelly Banks for Spellbinders. Now here we have two set of metal dies, a solid heart which would cut out the shadow layer for our focal point, and the second one which cuts out little pieces which we can be assembled together to create a beautiful layered heart shape. I'll be using the second piece and cutting it out in various shades of pink cardstocks to create our focal point. You'll see that this heart is definitely bigger than a standard A2 size card base. I will be placing the focal point in an angle, well, in a way that it covers most of my card front but also leaves room for a beautiful floral embossed background. Here are the five shades of pink cardstock that I'll be using, and I'll be cutting little strips of these cardstocks and placing them in between those die cut lines to create a beautiful ombre effect for my final focal point image. Well, now I'm not showing how I cut each of these little pieces. That's pretty straightforward. I have a little piece of cardstock placed on each of those gaps. I then cut the cardstock from the lightest shade moving towards the darkest shade of pink. I use my Spellbinders die cutting machine to cut out all these pieces. Once all of the pieces are cut, you can place them together more like puzzle piecing them to get this beautiful big heart focal point. Now, before we assemble it onto an A2 size panel, I decided to use the bold floral embossing folder. Now, this is a huge embossing folder measuring 5.5 by 8.5 inches. This is a beautiful floral background with different sizes of leaves and flowers and lots of fun dot designs. This embossing folder is again part of the Just Saying collection by Spellbinders. Just take a look at how pretty the design looks. Now that my background panel is ready, all we need to do is assemble these little pieces together to create a focal point. Now, another way to add texture to your card front would be adding texture to the focal point image instead of the background. For that, all you need to do is assemble the little pieces of heart and then run this focal point image sandwiched between the embossing folder. This would create a beautiful textured embossed focal point rather than having an embossed background. I did place the metal die over the background panel just to make sure that I have the positioning of the pieces correct. Once I adhere my first piece, it's very easy to follow the pattern and adhere the rest of the little pieces to create a beautiful heart focal point. I used liquid glue to adhere all of these little die cut pieces to create my focal point. Now, if you wanted, you could also use some foam tape and pop up these little pieces for an added dimension. You could also layer them onto that shadow piece. Well, there are so many ways you could use this die set. Once my focal point was ready, I trimmed off all the extra pieces that were hanging off the edge. It was now time to choose a beautiful sentiment for this card. Now, this card design would really go for any occasion card. You could make it into a birthday card, thank you card, or even just a thinking of you card. Now, for my sentiment, I use the Always and Forever letterpress sentiment strips. Now, this set has some really beautiful sentiments which are perfect for your everyday occasions. We have sentiments like Feel Better Soon, Hello Sweet Friend, Forever Grateful, You're My Everything, So Proud of You, and lots more. This set also comes with a coordinating die that cuts out all of these sentiments at once. Well, for my card, I used Thanks a Million sentiment. You could basically use any of these little sentiment strips here. This card is absolutely perfect for that. I think this would also be absolutely perfect for the Feel Better Soon sentiment as well. So I have my card front and my sentiment strip ready. It's now time to assemble this onto a card base. I used one of those medium shades of pink for my card base and I popped up the card front panel using some foam tape. I added a very thin strip of foam tape for my sentiment strip as well. Well, I like to use my liquid glue over the foam tape. This gives some wiggle room to make sure that the sentiment strip is perfectly aligned before I finally adhere it down onto the card front. I like to use my T-square ruler to align the sentiment strip and make sure it's completely straight. Now, to add some bling to the card front, I decided to use very light pink colored gemstones by Simon Says. I love the hint of sparkle that these gemstones add to this very clean and simple card front. I adhered them using my liquid glue. Here's a look at the finished card. I love how beautiful this card turned out. Now, this is a card project that you could definitely mass produce and create using a variety of different colors and different sentiment strips. Well, I used pinks, but I would definitely try these in different shades of reds, purples, blues, teals, greens, and yellows and oranges. Now, you could create a rainbow colored heart focal point too. Like I mentioned, there are so many different ways you could use this die set. Well, I had so much fun creating this card project, and I hope you enjoyed watching this video too. All the supplies that I used to create this card will be linked down in the description box below. Note that all the links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hello crafty friends and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm creating a very clean and simple card project using layered stamp set, which will be the focal point of our card, and an absolutely stunning textured and embossed background. Now both of these products are part of the latest favorite thing release by Simon Says. Before we get started, I would really appreciate if you could take a minute to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon so that you get notified every time I post a new video. Now, the card that I'm creating today is a very clean and simple thank you card, which will be loved by any book lover in your life. Now, I'm using one for the book's stamp set, which is a perfect stamp set for book lovers and creative storytellers. This features a fun layering set of images, which lets you design custom books with different titles and greetings. We also have some beautiful embellishments which can be stamped on the cover of your book. The sentiments include thank you, I love you, and happy birthday, which can be beautifully paired with the sub sentiments that include you're my favorite love story, here's to a next chapter, for being part of my story, hope it's one for the books, and you're the best in my book. For my background, I'm using the Bundle Swag embossing folder, which gives a beautiful textured design. I love the intricate pattern and details on this. Very elegant and sophisticated. Well, kind of reminds me of beautiful Bridgerton-like style. This embossing folder gave a very beautiful and graceful dimension to my very clean and simple card project. I will start by stamping our focal point image onto a white cardstock panel. The back of this stamp set has the sample images, which shows how beautifully all of the layers come together to create a book. You can also see that how beautifully all those embellishments and sentiments perfectly nestle between those little centerpiece of our book. You could use a variety of colors or even add some heat embossing onto your stamped image. I will be using my Simon Says Positively Saturated inks in the shades of purples and pinks for my book. I started with a beautiful violet shade for the main body of the book, and from there it is very easy to keep layering each component. It is at this time where you get to choose all the pretty colors that you like. Once I was done with my book, I stamped the thank you sentiment in the center using my VersaFine Onyx Black ink. And well, let's not forget the little embellishments on each side of our sentiment. Let me know in the comments down below what are your favorite color combinations and well, what kind of books do you like reading? Once I was done with the stamping, I went ahead and used my scissors to cut this image. Well, generally, I'm not a very big fan of fussy cutting. I either like having coordinating dies or use my brother's Canon cut to cut out the images. But this was a pretty easy image to cut, so I used my scissors and cut it out. Now, well, there are coordinating dies available which not only cut out the book but also the sentiments. I will leave a link to that in the description box below. Now that our focal point is ready, let's work on our background. Well, since the bundle swag embossing folder gives such a beautiful and textured design, I decided to keep it as simple as I could. I used white cardstock panel for my background. Well, all of the color on the card will be just on the focal point and we have a very simple background. Well, simple, yes, but there's still room for some splatter, right? I placed this embossed panel into my splatter box and I used the same pink and purple splatter along with black and golden. I like to use watercolor when it comes to splattering. Well, I will not say that I splattered this generously, but I do have enough to accentuate not just my background but also my focal point. I let this panel dry completely before I adhered it onto a side folding A2 size note card. Before I adhered the focal point onto the embossed background, I decided to add some shine to it. I'm using my Spectrum Noir Glitter brush pen on just the base cover of the book. I then adhered the embossed panel onto the card base using foam tape and then stuck the focal point image on the center of this embossed panel. I love how beautiful this card project turned out. A very clean and simple card with a fun layered focal point and a beautiful intricate embossed background. Well, I hope you had fun watching today's video and got inspired. All the supplies that I used to create this card will be linked down in the description box below. Please note that all of these links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Also, don't forget to check out the fun favorite things release by Simon System. I will have a link to that as well in the description box below. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hello crafty friends and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm introducing the new Bundle of Joy die set from the Little Smiles collection by Spellbinders. We will be creating a very sweet little scene of a special delivery from the sky. We have a stork delivering its bundle of joy. Well, before we get started, I would really appreciate if you could take a minute to subscribe to my channel and hit on the bell icon so that you get notified every time I post a new video. Let us first take a look at the Bundle of Joy die set. Now, this set includes a beautiful collection of little die cut pieces, which would be perfect to create a beautiful scene of a stork bringing in a special delivery from the sky. The stork peeking from the side with its delivery cap, and also a little baby with a bunch of different accessories, including a tiny bow, little beanie, mittens, and socks. We also have a washcloth in which our baby can be bundled up. The scene comes to life with a cloud backdrop as well as some beautiful little stars to fill the night sky. When assembled, the stork and the baby measures approximately 3.4 by 3.35 inches. Now I have little scrap pieces of paper in different colors which I will be using to cut out all of these little pieces to create our scene. Now, these are some fun colored cardstock from the Your Paper Insider subscription box. You could also cut out all of these pieces using white cardstock and then probably ink blend or use your alcohol markers and add colors to all those little die cut pieces. Well, I am using my Spellbinders Platinum 6 die cutting machine to cut out all these pieces. Once I have all my pieces ready, I like to store them in this tray by Cat's Crappiness. Now, I use this tray usually to store my sequences or gems while I'm adding sparkle on my card front. But this is big enough and perfect to store all of those little die cut pieces together. Now, if you take a closer look, you can see that all of these little pieces can be layered beautifully. They have etched markings on them, which makes our work a lot more easier. That's the beauty about the dies by Spellbinders. They can be so easily assembled. Everything coordinates perfectly well with each other, be it creating a focal point or an entire background scenes, just like the one we will be creating today. Even though I used colored cardstock to cut out all the little die cut pieces, I want to add some extra color and shading to these pieces for an added dimensional look. Now for that, I will bring my glass mat from Glassboard Studio. This mat that I'm using here measures 9 by 12 inches. These Glassboard Studio mats are made of premium quality glass. They are quick to clean, heat resistant, and stain proof, making them perfect for various mediums directly on the board. This also has a metal backing which creates a magnetic surface perfect for holding papers, stencils, and lots more. I will be doing some ink blending over the little pieces. It is very easy to clean up all those ink markings from the board. I'm using some really bright pinks from the Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated ink line, which would definitely stain any other surface. You will also note that as I'm applying glue to these little tiny pieces, the glue gets onto the mat, which I was easily able to clean using a wet rag. Well, once all of my pieces are colored and glued together, we can assemble the stork and the bundle baby, which would be the focal point of our card. I will put some foam tape on both these pieces since I want my focal point to be popped up on the cloudy sky background. For the sky, I cut a piece of blue cardstock to 4 by 5 1 quarter, which is slightly smaller than a standard A2 size card base. Then, using the cloud die, I cut 3 layers of the cloud. The first one using bright blue color, the second would be white, and the third layer using a very light gray color. I layered all of these clouds over one another using liquid glue and then cut off any of those extra pieces that were hanging from the edge of our cardstock panel. I then assembled the stork and our bundled baby towards the top of the card panel. Don't forget to add those little tiny stars scattered in the sky. Well, I did use foam tape for my focal point because I wanted to pop up and give an extra dimension to our focal point, and I used some liquid glue for the stars. I love how cute and adorable this little scene turned out to be. Now, before I stuck the panel onto a card base, I decided to add my sentiment strip, which is a letterpress sentiment that says, "Welcome, little one," which I thought was perfect for our little scene. I then adhered this panel on top of an A2 size note card. To finish off the card, I added some sparkle using my Spectrum Noir glitter brush pen, highlighting the pinks on the card. Well, here's a closer look at the finished card. I absolutely love how this card turned out. I hope you had fun watching today's video and got inspired. All the supplies that I used to create this card can be found linked in the description box below. Please note that all of these links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hello, crafty friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I am so excited to be sharing a fun new release called Blend and Bling by Cat's Crappiness. Now, this is my absolute favorite release because, like the name suggests, this one is full of fun, glittery bling, which is something that I love adding on my cards. Now, if you're someone who loves creating shaker cards or adding sequin mixes on your card fronts, this release is just for you. We also have a set of mini detailed blending brushes, which would be perfect to get in those tiny little spaces of your stencils. Apart from these new release products, I will also be sharing my favorites that I feel go perfectly with these embellishments. But before we get started, I would really appreciate if you could take a minute to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon so that you get notified every time I post a new video. Also, check out the Cat Scrappiness website and their Instagram page for some fun giveaways and deals. I will leave a link to all those down in the description box below. Now, here's a look at the assortment of all the fun sequin mixes that are part of this new release. We have some fun greens, pinks, blues, and purples, all of which are beautiful glittery sequin mixes. Now, along with the glitters, we also have a few clay sprinkles. Now, each of these packages, be it the glitters or sequins, or the clay sequins, they contain approximately 1.5 to 2 teaspoons of sequin in a clear resealable plastic bag. I'll be showing you a close up of all of these sequins and sprinkle mixes, and in the end, I also have a few projects that I have created using these. Let us get started with some beautiful pinks and greens. Now here I have 4 packs of these pinks. We have Radiant Rose Glitter Mix, which is more of a darker shade pink. And these are absolutely beautiful. Next we have is the Rambling Rose glitter mix, which contains a mix of the Radiant Rose and the Cotton Candy Glow glitter mix. Now this cotton candy is a very light colored, a very baby pink kind of a glitter. Next, we have the paw print sequin mix. Now, this is absolutely beautiful and it has a beautiful shine on it when you tilt it across the light. And this would be perfect for your dog lovers or cat lovers or any animal lovers, basically. Next, we have a blend of those pinks and greens in the Tropical Glitter Paradise. Now, this is a beautiful transition between the pink and green, and I absolutely love these. These also have some glass like sequins in them. The greens we have Olive Grove glitter mix, Kiwi Sparkle, and Pastel Lime glitter sequin mix. Absolutely gorgeous collection. Now, moving on to the blues, we have a wide variety here, and not just glitter mix, but we also have sequin mixes here. Now, I'll get started with the lightest shade that I have here, which is the Dolly's Denim Glitter Sequin Mix, which is a very light, beautiful blue. A tone darker would be the Peacock Blue Glitter Mix, and finally, we have the Majestic Royal Blue Glitter Mix, which is an absolutely beautiful darker shade of blue. Here we have the Ocean Breeze glitter mix, which I feel is a combination of all of the three glitter mixes that I just showed you, the Dolly Denim, Peacock Blue, and the Majestic Royal Blue. I absolutely love this variety. This Ocean Breeze glitter sequin mix is a beautiful blend of all those three. Now, just like the pink paw print, we also have a blue paw print, which is absolutely beautiful. And take a look at that shine on these. Now, next in this pack, we have the blue teal solid confetti sequin mix, which is a perfect blend of 4 and 6 teal blue round confetti sequins. Now, this does not have any glitter on it, but I can tell the shine on it, it's absolutely amazing. Next, we have three more. We have the Platinum Gold Glitter Mix, Celebration Glitter Sprinkles, which is a mix of the platinum gold and a bright navy color, and the Red Hat Ladies, which has red and purple in it. Here's a look at all those beautiful sparkly glitter sequin mixes. I love that you have so much variety to choose from. The colors on these are absolutely beautiful, and these would bring out so much more character and texture to your cards. Also, note that these are no shed glitter sequins, so you have all the sparkles that you need in your card without any of the glittery mess. Now, after all that fun glitter, let's move on to some clay sprinkles. Now, I will start with my absolute favorite, which is the Party Balloon Clay Sprinkles. Now, these are really beautiful little sprinkle mixes with party balloons, multicolored party balloons, which would be perfect for your shaker cards or even maybe shaker balloon windows. Next, we have the Rubber Duck Bath Embellishment Mix, which has these beautiful little crystals which resemble water droplets and cute little ducks in them. Next, we have the Happy Pills Sprinkle Mix, which is this cute and adorable little pills that would be perfect for a get well soon card. We have blues, reds, and yellows in them. Now, this is the most adorable thing I feel. It is the Valentine's Mouse Ear Sprinkle. And take a look at those absolutely gorgeous colors. We have red, pink, and white, which I feel is a perfect combination. Next is the 100 Acres Wood Sprinkle Mix. Moving on, we have It's Always You 3. And well, this one is definitely my favorite. This is the dimensional buttered popcorn. Now, Cat Scrappiness had a similar product in the past release, which was the dimensional cheesy popcorn, which I absolutely loved. Now, bring your movie night or snack themed card projects to life with this ultra realistic buttery popcorn embellishment. Now, here's an example of a card that I created using the dimensional cheesy popcorn, and well, that is an absolutely realistic looking embellishment. You have to definitely give it a try. Last but not the least, we have the Gamer Boy Sprinkle Mix for all those fun little gaming cards and projects that you create. The second part of this release is the mini detailed blending brush. Now, in this pack, we have three blending brushes designed for precise application, which makes it perfect for stenciling, shading, or ink blending in tight spaces. Now, these are ultra soft blending brushes, which gives a beautiful blending with no harsh edges of streaks. Comparing this with the half-inch firm and soft ink blending brush, I feel that these have more of a slanting edge, which makes it easier to get into those tight spaces or tiny little spaces in your detailed stenciling. These work amazing with a variety of different inks, be it dye inks or your distress oxide inks. You can clean these brushes using mild soap and water. Cat Scrappiness also has larger ink blending brushes. All of those will be linked down in the description box below. Like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I will also be sharing few of my favorite products by Cat Scrappiness which can be paired well with the sequences. I will begin with these trays that will hold all of those little sequin mixes. First, I have the triangle embellishment trays. Now, you can get this in a pack of one or as a bundle of four. We have four colors: white, black, light purple, and light pink. Now, these are absolutely perfect when it comes to organizing your small embellishments or even little die cut pieces. The other tray you see here is the funnel tray, which comes with a cap. Now, these are perfect for sorting through your small embellishments like sequences, beads, clay sprinkles. Well, you can also use this to pour your heat embossing powder, and it can be easily transferred back into the bottle. The cap will make sure that all of your embellishments and powders are secure until you're ready to pour them out. Next, we have the white crystal dual-ended embellishment pickup and die poker tool. Now, this one features a pointy craft pick and die poker tool on one end and a wax tip on the other. Each of these ends are capped for safety and convenience. The wax tip helps you pick up your embellishments and place it onto your projects, while the pointy end can be used to poke through the holes in your dies to release the paper or to push the die cut pieces to release them from the paper. Cat Scrappiness also has replacement wax tips which can be bought separately. Now, this is something which you would have seen me use often on all of my different projects and in all of my videos. Next, we have the rainbow reverse tweezers, which are absolutely perfect to pick up tiny little pieces. Or, well, I like to use this when I'm adding glue or any kind of adhesive to little die cut pieces or sentiments. Now, these are all the products and tools that I like to use with my embellishments and sequences, so I thought this would be an absolute perfect addition if you plan on getting some of the new release products. Don't forget to check out the links in the description box below for all these tools and products. I do have some projects that I would love to share with you guys that I created using these sequin mixes and the blending brushes. Now, all of these cards are shaker cards, and I will be sharing the list of products that I used in these cards. The first card here involves all of those beautiful green sequin mixes. This is a window card, and for the background, I have the sunburst background stencil for which I use the mini ink blending brushes. I have the kiwi sparkle, pastel lime, and olive grove glitter sequin mix. Now, the second card here is an edge to edge shaker card, which is an absolutely gorgeous card, I feel, and this would be absolutely beautiful for your dog lovers. Here I have the pink paw print sequin mix, rambling rose, radiant glitter, and cotton candy. The similar one I created using the blue sequin mix combinations. We have the Dolly Denim, Ocean Breeze, blue paw print, and also a hint of gold using the platinum gold sequin mix. Now, both of these are edge to edge shaker cards, which are absolutely flat and easy to be mailed out. Here I have a birthday card, which I wanted it to be absolutely colorful. And here I use the party balloon sprinkle mix, which was the clay sequence. Along with that, I have the peacock blue glitter, olive grove, and red hat glitter. I used the stitched wacky frame die to create a gift box effect along with the fancy bow dies. Next, we have this gorgeous card which I thought was super fun. I used the Tropical Paradise glitter sequin mix, which was that beautiful pink and green transition. Uh, Also, take a look at the Cowboy Quokka die cut ephemera, which I feel is an absolutely wonderful product, saves a lot of time. Now, this card I think would be my favorite. This is the beautiful rubber duck bath embellishment mix what I've used here. And I created a beautiful underwater scene with the majestic royal blue and celebration glitter sprinkles. And for my background, I used the willow field stencil to create a beautiful wavy effect. And I used my little ink blending brushes for that. Moving on to the next card, we have the coffee cup die, and this is a get well soon card where I use the happy pill sprinkle mix and the coffee cup die. Now I did some partial die cutting here, so my coffee cup is a small little pill box, and I paired it with a get well die. I didn't use the shadow here, just the word die. Last but not the least, we have this beautiful magical memories cards and a little mouse die cut. I used the Dolly Denim and Radiant Rose glitter mix and the Valentine mouse ears clay sprinkles. And I feel this is a very clean and simple yet an elegant card project. So those were a few cards that I created using all of those little sequin mixes and the blending brushes. Do check out the Cat Scrappiness store where you will find a lot more inspirations and pictures of card projects that was created by our talented design team. Now, this will give you an idea of how there are more fun ways to use all of these products. We also have an Instagram hop going on right now where the design team is sharing projects using the newly released blending brushes and embellishments. Well, I hope you had fun watching this very sparkly and glittery release. I had so much fun creating all of those cards for you guys. I will have links to all the products that I used to create these cards, new and old, down in the description box below. Please note that all of these links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hello crafty friends and welcome back to my channel. Today we will be creating some beautiful and colorful cards using layering stencils. Now the products that I'm using today are from the latest Rain or Shine release by Simon System. Now this release is loaded with summer and spring themed products. We have beautiful embossing folders, bunnies and underwater adventures, layering stencils, stamp, dies and stencil bundles and lots more. Before we take a look at all those beautiful products, I would really appreciate if you could take a minute to subscribe to my channel and hit on the bell icon so that you get notified every time I post a new video. Now here are some of the products that I received by Simon System which are from the new Rain or Shine release. Now we have a couple of stamps here, an embossing folder with a die cut and this beautiful stencil that we will be using for our cards today. Let us first take a look at the Argyle Builder stencil. Now this is what we will be using for all our cards today. This includes three 6x6 stencils which will help us create beautiful Argyle patterns. You can use two different shades to color in the diamonds, and for the third stencil which has the crisscross stitching pattern, you could either use ink blending, pastes or even heat embossing. This would be perfect to create beautiful and colorful card backgrounds. I have created two cards using these beautiful backgrounds and some fun color combinations. For my third card, I did do some masking on that stencil. Well, the next product that we have is the Cuddly Bundle Wafer Die. Now, this set has two dies, which helps you create an adorable little bunny that would be perfect for your spring cards. You can assemble these to create a bunny with a soft rounded belly, puffed tail, and those cute little bunny ears. You could layer them using pattern papers or use some textured cardstock for an added dimension, or just go the old fashioned way by using some colored cardstock or do your ink blending. Next, we have the brilliant budding floral embossing folder and cutting die. Now, this will create three beautiful blooms with a thin stem on each of those blooms. It also includes a coordinating die that allows you to cut one of those blooms, adding an extra dimension and versatility to your card front. Now, when using the embossing folder and the cutting die, I would recommend first die cutting the image and then running it through the embossing folder. This will prevent flattening of those beautiful textured embossed images. You can use markers, pencil colors, or even paints on these textured backgrounds with beautiful colors. For me personally, I love doing the blackout technique on these beautiful embossed backgrounds. Let me know in the comments down below what is your favorite way to enhance the details on such textured and beautiful embossed backgrounds. I use my Spellbinders Platinum 6 machine. So with that, I usually have the platform base, then the folder over which I place my cutting plates. I will have a link below with helpful sandwich recipes using the Simon System 3D embossing folders and your die cutting machines. Next, we have the Mod Plant 6 by 8 stamp set, which gives a beautiful modern touch to your floral cards. We have 5 floral designs, which would be perfect to create some clean and simple minimalist cards. Complementing the contemporary design, we have some bold sentiments, the bigger sentiments, which is hello and friend, and some sub greetings, which include you made my day, you make me smile, you brighten my day, and thankful for you. This would be perfect to create single layered cards. Now, this does come with coordinating die sets and the Mod Plants block stencil, which will help you create striking and graphic backgrounds for these floral images. Next, we have the Get Well Soon stamp, which I feel is the cutest stamp set in my collection. This set features adorable whales along with some little fishes and coral reef and some bubbles, which is perfect to create an underwater adventure. This would be absolutely perfect to create a Get Well Soon card or even a birthday card. Last but not the least, I have the Happy Bee Day stamp set. This is a small 3 by 4 inch stamp set for your fun bee themed projects. The focal point image is this beautiful little bee wearing a tiny crown and holding a honeycomb shaped balloon. We also have some looping bee trails, a tiny little bee, honeycomb clusters, and some fun, adorable sentiments. Let us now get started with our projects. I will be creating 3 cards today using the Argyle Builder stencil. I'll be batch producing these, which means that I will be first creating all of my backgrounds and then I will move on to the focal points and finally I'll have my sentiment. Starting with my backgrounds, here this Argyle Builder stencil has 3 layers, 2 of which are the diamond shape and the third stencil is the one with the crisscross pattern. I like to use my Simon Stamp sticky mat, which is perfect to hold my cardstock and the stencil in place while I ink blend on them. Now I'm using an A2 size white cardstock for my backgrounds and I will be later trimming all of these panels to measure 4 by 5 1/4, which is a 1/4 inch smaller than the A2 size panel. For my first background, I decided to go with yellow and peach for the diamond layers and beautiful sage green for the stitched pattern. The color combinations that I've used here for all of my backgrounds today are very new to me. I have paired yellows with pinks and oranges in the past, but never with this beautiful blush shade. I love that this is very close to orange, but not as dark and vibrant and has more peachy undertone to it. I started with this beautiful yellow citrine. I used my ink blending brush to evenly spread out the ink on all of the exposed surface of the paper. Now, whenever I'm using my sticky mat, I like to have the plastic sheet on the back of the sticky mat. This makes sure that I can move around the mat while I'm ink blending and that my mat is not stuck on my work surface. Now, since we will be creating more than one background, I will first make sure that I clean the stencil before moving on to stencil number 2. Usually, I would just keep it away and take all of the stencils together and wash it under some running tap water. But here what I'm doing is I place my stencil over one of the microfiber cloths by Simon System. I then sprayed the stencil with some plain water using my spray bottle. And then I use another microfiber cloth to wipe away all that water and color from the stencil. This I feel is the quickest way to clean your stencils. I will set this aside to dry while we use our next stencil to complete the background. For layer number 2, I will be using peachy ink, which is this beautiful peach shade that I feel complements perfectly with the yellow. Now, these positively saturated inks might look a little splotchy at first, but once the ink settles into the paper, you will get a seamless, smooth looking ink blended background. Now, I cleaned the stencil too before I moved on to my third stitched pattern stencil. For this one, I used Sage ink. I went back and forth with my mini ink blending tool and the regular one, and I found that the mini ink blending tool was a lot more easier to get into those tiny little spaces. You could also use your gels and pastes or even add your embossing powder to this third layer. Here's a look at the finished background. I love this beautiful color combination. This is something that I will definitely note down and probably use in my future projects. Now, like I mentioned before, we will be creating all of our backgrounds first. For the second card, all of the technique remains the same. We just have new set of colors. Now for card number 2, I will be using lighter shades of pink and orange. We have bubblegum and melon, and for the stitching layer, I have used flannel, which is the lighter shade of gray that I have in my positively saturated ink collection. Once I have ink blended on this panel, I noticed that the flannel ink was either heavily pigmented or I must have used extra pressure while ink blending. Some of that ink got out of the stencil area, but we will fix that in our finished card. Card number 3 is slightly different than the previous two cards. Here, instead of creating an entire background, I'll be masking parts of the stencil to create a pattern for our card front. Also, I'll be using two stencils instead of all three. I will start with one of the diamond stencils and the stitch pattern stencil. Now, I plan on creating an underwater themed birthday card, so I'll be using some beautiful shades of teal to ink blend on this panel. I used seafoam for the diamond and dark ocean to create the stitched pattern look. I began by masking one strip of the pattern onto my card panel. Now make sure that your card panel is perfectly aligned to the stencil, making sure that this pattern is in a straight line. I use some masking tape to mask off the remaining of the stencil and blended seafoam on the first layer. I do the same masking on the stitched pattern stencil as well. And then using my mini detailed ink blending brush, I added ocean ink to create this beautiful pattern. I love the clean and simple look on this card front. So when you're using a background stencil, it's not necessary that you create an entire background out of it or use all the stencils that is included in the pack. Well, you can mismatch or mask or use just some parts of the stencil to create your own pattern, your own backgrounds. I love how these three backgrounds turned out. It's not just the pattern, but also the color combination looks absolutely beautiful. Once my backgrounds were done, it was now time to work on the focal points. Off camera, I went ahead and colored and die cut all of the focal points for the cards and also stamped and heat embossed some sentiment strips. I will take the pink and orange background first. For this card, I used the Cuddly Bunny die set and created a cute and adorable little focal point bunny sitting on some leaves that I cut out using the leafy sprig die. For my sentiment, I stamped the Thankful for You sentiment from the Mod Plant stamp set onto a strip of black cardstock. I heat embossed the sentiment using a white embossing powder. Note that before adhering all of the focal point and the sentiment strips, I did trim the panels to be 4 by 5 1 quarter, which is slightly smaller than a standard A2 size card base. Then, using some foam tape, I adhered this panel onto a top folding A2 size card base. Moving on to card number 2, which is the background that I created using the yellow citrine and peach ink. I decided to keep this card very simple and add just a sentiment strip on the center of this card panel. I stamped and heat embossed the Sending Hugs sentiment from the Hoppy Days Ahead stamp set, which is one of the older stamp sets by Simon. I adhered this onto the center of this card panel and mounted this on top of a top folding A2 size card base. For card number 3, I have some cute and adorable whales that I stamped and colored, and using my brother's Canon cut, I cut out all those images. Now, these are from the new Get Whale Soon stamp set, which I showed earlier in the video. I also stamped and heat embossed the Have a Really Good Birthday sentiment onto a strip of black cardstock. I love how cute and adorable this looks. I use tiny foam squares to adhere all of these elements onto the card front, and then using liquid glue, I adhere the card front onto a vibrant blue top folding card base. Here's a look at all of the finished cards. Well, initially I thought of leaving these cards as is, but later I decided to add some bling on each of these cards. I used my beautiful, positively dazzling gems, which come in a variety of different colors that add a touch of sparkle to all of your crafting projects. My absolute favorite would be the light pink gems on my bunny card. Which one's your favorite? Do let me know in the comments section below. Well, thank you for joining me today, and I hope you had fun watching the video as much as I had fun creating these cards. I will have links to all the products that I used to create these cards and will link to the latest Rain or Shine release by Simon Stamp. Please note that all of these links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hello crafty friends and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a 2 for 1 card design where we will be creating cards using the die cut as the main focal point on a very vibrant ink blended background, and also use the negative space from the die cutting to create a very clean and simple card front. I'll be creating Eid Mubarak card for you guys. Before we get started, I would really appreciate if you could take a minute to subscribe to my channel and hit on the bell icon so that you get notified every time I post a new video. Let us first take a look at the die that I'll be using today. This is the Eid Mubarak die by Altenew. This die is an Arabic script for Eid Mubarak and it is perfect for creating dimensional cards, die cut projects, die cut inclays, perfect for all of your Eid festivities. This die measures roughly around 3 by 3.5 inches, which is big enough to cover an entire card front. And this sentiment die can be used as a main focal point for your cards, just like what we will be doing today. The only element on my card fronts other than the sentiment die would be a couple of positively dazzling gems by Simon Stamp. This die is compatible with majority of the die cutting machines that are available in the market. Today I'm using my Sizzix Big Shot, but I also tried using this with my Spellbinders Platinum 6 and Gemini Junior die cutting machine, and each time it gave me beautiful results. Take a look at this beautiful and intrinsic design. This is a very delicate die cut, so I would prefer using a heavyweight cardstock to cut it out. For the negative piece, make sure to hold on to all those tiny little pieces that fall off from the main die cut focal point. We will be using all those to inlay and to complete our Eid Mubarak sentiment. Here I have used my Nina 110 pound cardstock. I wanted to keep both of these cards really clean and simple, and I will be adding color to my background instead. Well, you could also do it the other way around, wherein you create a very bright and colorful focal point and pair it with a very clean and simple background. Let's get started with card number 1, for which I will be using these beautiful purples and teals for my background. I'm using the Simon Stamp Positively Saturated inks in the shade Twilight, Galaxy, Ocean and Surf. This panel will go behind my A2 size negative panel, so the color will show up only through the negative spaces of the die cut sentiment. For ink blending, I like to place my panels onto this glass mat by Glassboard Studio. This is a very easy surface to work with. The pond magnets hold my paper in place without me being worried of the paper moving around. Also, if you get any ink, glue, or any kind of spray stains on this glass mat, it is super easy to clean. All you need is a spray bottle and some water and a clean microfiber cloth. For ink blending, I started with Twilight and Galaxy on one end of this card panel, while on the other end, I used Surf and Ocean. These positively saturated inks blend beautifully. I just made sure that the colors meet at a point where I'll get an ombre look on my sentiment. Well, even clean and simple cards need a lot of shine and sparkle. So, once I was done ink blending, I placed my panel into my splatter box and sprayed the panel with this beautiful shimmer spray. Now, this gives a very sparkly, silvery hint on my card panel, which I feel matches perfectly with the violet and teal. Once I've sprayed the panel completely, I will let it dry while we move on to panel number 2. For panel number 2, I'll be using a very unusual color combination, something which I have never tried before. I'll be using yellow, orange, and brown. Before I started ink blending, I was really not sure of how this panel would turn out or if this color combination would even work. But I'm really happy with the end result. Now for this card, I'll be ink blending all over the background since this will be the card front. Like in the previous card where the ink blended background only showed up behind our negative die cut space, this panel will be the card front and we just have a white die cut sentiment which will be the focal point on this card front. For this panel, I have used a bunch of different colors and shades of the positively saturated inks. We have Zest and Citrine for yellow, Pucker, Sherbet, and Cantaloupe for oranges, Cappuccino, Mocha, and Woodsy for the browns. I started with yellows in the center and orange on the top and brown at the bottom. I pulled my brown into the yellow. Well, I love how beautiful this panel turned out. Just like we did for the previous panel, I brought this panel into my splatter box and we will be using the Distress Sprit Spray in the shade Fossilized Amber. This gives a very beautiful gold hint to our ink blended background which matches perfectly with the browns. This panel definitely looks like a beautiful sunset and I'm really in love with those colors and the ink blending on this panel. I will let this panel completely dry and then, well, we can work on assembling our card fronts. For card number 1, I assembled the negative die cut panel directly onto the ink blended background using some liquid glue. Don't forget those tiny little pieces that make up our sentiment. Well, once you take a closer look at this, you will see the shine and shimmer and the ombre look peeking through the die cut space. You could also add a sub-sentiment onto this panel, either stamping using a crisp black ink or white heat embossing your sentiment onto a strip of black cardstock. But I decided to keep it as is and added some gems and we can call this card done. For card number 2, I'll be using the Eid Mubarak sentiment as the focal point on the card front. I will directly adhere the sentiment onto the ink blending background. Well, before I do that, I die cut another piece of the sentiment using white cardstock and stacked both of these together to give a little dimensional and sturdy look to our focal point. I then adhered the sentiment onto the lower part of the panel where most of the brown ink blending is done. I feel that the white pops up really well against the beautiful brown background. Now that both my panels are done, I use some foam tape to pop these up onto a top folding A2 size card base. I love the clean and simple look on both these cards with beautiful ink blending and the sparkle that the shimmer spray and the distress spray give. To finish off, I will be adding some of the positively dazzling gems. I have a very beautiful light blue shade from the Pastel Tones Dazzling Gems for card number 1, which I thought matches perfectly with the purple and teal ombre look. And I have some very subtle orange shade from the Metallic Tones Dazzling Gems for card number 2, which matches perfectly with the orange and brown on this ink blended background. Here's a look at both the cards that we created today. I love how beautiful these turned out and how easy they were to create. A fun way to create 2-for-1 card design with zero waste. We had no die cut scraps or any kind of paper that was being wasted. Well, I hope you had fun watching today's video and got inspired. This is a technique you could definitely try and use for any of your focal point images or bold die cut sentiments. All the supplies that I used in today's video will be found linked in the description box below. Please note that all of these links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe and Eid Mubarak to all my crafty friends. Hello crafty friends and welcome back to my channel. Today we will be creating a very clean and simple card design with some fun ombre stamping, fixing ink blending mistakes, some quick fixes, and a card design that can be easily mass produced. Before we get started, I would really appreciate if you could take a minute to subscribe to my channel and hit on the bell icon so that you get notified every time I post a new video. Let us first take a look at the stamp set that I'll be using today. I'm using the Mod Plants stamp, which was part of the latest Rain or Shine release by Simon's Stamp. Now, this is a very beautiful botanical themed stamp set with these fun plant silhouettes. You could use these floral images to create a very clean and simple card design like what we will be doing today, or create beautiful backgrounds, die cut focal points, and so much more. I also love the font on these sentiments. We have two bold sentiments which says hello and friend, and some sub sentiments which are so versatile that can be used for cards all around the year. We have you made my day, you make me smile, you brighten my day, and thankful for you. This stamp not only comes with a coordinating die but also comes with the mod plant block stencils that would be perfect to add a bold modern background to your botanical design. For stamping, I have my Simon's Stamp Positively Saturated inks in the shade Dublin, Lucky, and Pine. And also, since well, I mentioned I will be creating an ombre effect, I loved this combination. For the upper part of the flower, I have Punch and Zest, which is a beautiful combination of yellow and pink. I'll start by placing an A2 size panel into my stamping tool. Now for the card design that we are creating today, I would definitely recommend having a stamping tool since we will be stamping the same design multiple times in different shades of ink. I will start with the greens for my stem and leaves. We will begin by masking the stamp I like to use a small piece of post-it tape and I masked off the upper portion of the floral image with the post-it tape. I started with a lighter shade of green, which is Dublin, and stamped the entire image using this color. Make sure before you close the door of your stamping tool, you remove the post-it tape. After Dublin, I used the next shade, which was Lucky. Now for this, I did some partial stamping, which means that I didn't stamp the entire area using this color. I just stamped a part of it also. Before closing the door of my stamping tool, I made sure that I used a mini ink blending tool to soften the edges of this lucky shade. I repeated the same with pine, bringing the shade more closer to the edge of the stamped image. You will notice there's a slight gap in that image. It's probably because I didn't condition my stamp very well. Usually, new stamps need some kind of conditioning before you can ink them up. Also, this being a solid layer stamp, conditioning is more important here. Well, this is a problem that can be fixed, which is exactly what I'll be showing later in the video. Now, once I was done stamping the leaves and the stems, I will move on to the upper part of this floral image. Now I will be doing the same exact technique of ombre stamping, but for this part, instead of having the same color in different shades, I will be adding an ombre effect using two different colors. I will start with a bright pink that is punch. I stamped it almost 3/4 of this floral image. Don't forget to mask your stem and leaves. I did use my mini ink blending tool to smoothen the edges, which will allow an easy blend into the yellow and not show up any harsh lines. For my yellow, I have Zest, and this will finish up the entire floral image. You will notice that I used bigger ink pads for my greens and the mini ink cubes for the petals. I would say I prefer using the mini ink cubes since that gives a lot more control when you're trying to partially ink up your image. I really love the color combination. The vibrant pink blending into the yellow gives a beautiful look to our floral image. Now, before I remove the panel from my stamping tool, I decided to stamp my sentiment. I went with the big, bold hello sentiment and stamped it twice using my VersaFine Onyx black ink. While I was stamping the second time, I probably moved the paper and, well, I got an overlap of the stamp, which made my sentiment look a little distorted. Now, there are two ways you could fix that. Either you could keep this overlap distorted image as is and add some white highlights, or you could replace it by adding a sentiment strip. Well, I chose to add a sentiment strip. I stamped the same hello sentiment onto a strip of black cardstock and white heat embossed it. Well, I can say I was not very confident with the white highlights. That's the reason I went with the black sentiment strip instead. Before adding the sentiment strip in place, I decided to add some splatters onto this card front. I have some gold metallic watercolor and black watercolor splatters all over this image. Well, I lightly tap on my brush so that not big blobs of these watercolors fall on the card front. I let my panel dry completely before I fixed the empty little spaces on my stems and leaves, the little imperfections from the green stamping. The easiest way to fix this is using your alcohol markers in the shades that are close to the ink shades. Now, I had a couple of greens in my Ohuhu marker collection that I thought matched perfectly with the shades of green on our stamped image. And just like that, we fixed not one but two mistakes or, well, say, imperfections on our card panel. I adhered my sentiment strip using some liquid barely art glue. I like to use my T-square ruler when I'm trying to adhere my sentiments or align die-cut sentiments or stamps on my card fronts. Now, before I place this panel onto a top folding note card, I trimmed the panel to be 4 by 5 and quarter, which is slightly smaller than an A2 size card base. Using some foam tape, I adhered this panel onto my card base. I also added some highlights on my focal point image using my white gel pen. And that's a look at the finished card. I love how easy this was to create. Even though we had to fix some of our imperfections, I feel this card design to be perfect and can be easily mass produced using all those beautiful sentiments in our stamp set. Well, I did go ahead and create another card using a different floral image and a thankful for you sentiment. And I absolutely love how this project turned out. So here are two very similar designs, just that one card has a sentiment strip and a white highlight on the focal point image, while the other one is something that can be used as a single layer card project where the focal point image and the sentiment is stamped directly onto the card front. Well, thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed watching today's video as much as I did creating these card projects. All the supplies that I used today will be linked down in the description box below. Please note that all of these links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe. Hello crafty friends and welcome back to my channel. Today I will be sharing two cards that I created using one big focal point image. We have lots of watercoloring and some beautiful highlights. Well, watercoloring for me is fairly new and I must say very intimidating. But I'm so glad I tried it on these two cards today. Before we get started, I would really appreciate if you could take a minute to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon so that you get notified every time I post a new video. Let us first take a look at the stamp set that I'll be using today. This is the Flourishing Garden set by Alteneu. This set features an exquisite floral bouquet which I thought was perfect for my watercoloring today. This also includes 28 sentiments that you can add to your projects, including 4 big sentiments that can be paired well with the smaller sub-sentiments. Now this comes with a coordinating die that will cut out the huge floral image along with the 4 bold sentiments. I also have coordinating stencils, which makes it a lot more easier to color in and add shading to all those beautiful flowers. But for today, we will be using only the stamp and the die and skip the stencil. Instead, we will be adding some beautiful heat embossing to create an outline for our watercolors. I started by placing a sheet of watercolor cardstock on my stamping tool. This entire focal point image is definitely bigger than a standard A2 size card front, so you can definitely use it to create two cards instead of one. The watercolor panel that I'm using here measures 6 by 8.5 inches, which I can cut later to have two card fronts. Now, since I'm heat embossing on this panel, I will make sure that I run my anti-static powder tool well to make sure that the powder sticks only to the stamped image. Also note that unlike your regular cardstock, the watercolor cardstock is a little more rough on the surface, so you need to make sure that you powder it up well before you stamp your focal point image. I used white pigment ink to stamp my image since I will be using white embossing powder. You could also use gold embossing powder to make your coloring a lot more easier. I must say, I did struggle a bit having white on white. It was really difficult to find the margins, making sure that my color does not bleed outside the line. In future, I would probably try stamping the image using lighter shade of distress inks, but I'm still in a beginner stage of watercoloring, so I feel the embossing powder creates wells, which helps with the flow of color within the lines. I will be using my Spring Garden set watercolor brush markers by Alteneu. I absolutely love this set. It has some really bright and vibrant colors. And well, I have been using this for so many different projects. I decided to experiment with my colors for these cards, and since there were so many flowers, I decided to add a mix of colors to each of them. Well, you will see later in the video that I almost used all of the colors from the set. Now, as I begin with my watercoloring, it might be a little difficult for you guys to see that on camera, but once I get to a certain point where there's a lot of color on the paper, you will know exactly where the flowers are and what petal I'm coloring. I started by applying a generous amount of water on a clean brush on one of those petals and then dipped the tip of the pink watercolor as an outline to the petals. You will see that the water pulls in all the color towards the center. Well, nothing fancy here. Just like I did for the pink color, I did the same for the next color, which was purple. All I needed to do is touch the tip to the water puddle and the embossed line created a well, which made sure that my ink does not fall out of those stamped lines. I also made sure that I was coloring in alternate petals just so that the colors don't bleed into each other. I used pink, purple, and yellow for the two big flowers, and for the smaller flowers, I used orange and yellow. The flowers on the other side, I used pink and yellow. I am absolutely in love with this color combination. Like I mentioned, I was just trying to play with the colors here and making sure that I had some really bright and vibrant petals. Once I was done with all the flowers, I used two shades of green to color in the leaves. You will also notice that I used my heat gun at some point to make sure that my layers are dry before I either added more color or if I was planning on coloring an adjacent petal or leaf. Sorry, my head gets in the way a couple of times, but the white on white definitely made it a lot more difficult to find the edges of the stamped image. I think I would have probably chosen gold embossing powder had I known I would take such a long time to do this. Also, this part of the video is highly sped up. I must have taken almost an hour to color these flowers. I know it looks nowhere close to anything professional, but I surely had a lot of fun coloring the stamped image. For my leaves and stems, I used two shades of greens. Using the exact same technique that I use for my flowers, I colored in my leaves as well. Now, if you're using your coordinating stencils, this set has a pack of 6 stencils, which helps you create beautiful details on these flowers. You could also choose a specific family of colors to add in your shadows and depth to the image. I should also mention that the set comes with a 3D embossing folder as well, which is, well, not the exact same floral image, but has some charming small little flowers that would create beautiful backgrounds with an intricate design. I then used a lighter shade of brown to fill in the flower centers. Now at this point, this image looks very flat, so I decided to bring in my alcohol markers to add some shadows and depth to our floral images. Please note that the white embossing powder resisted all of our watercolor, but it might not resist the alcohol markers. So while I'm using my alcohol markers to apply shading to my petals, I will make sure that I don't touch the edges. Well, there are a couple of places where the color gets into the embossed lines, which I will later fix with my white gel pen. You will notice that I'm using alcohol markers in the same color family. I have the same pinks, purples, yellows, and oranges for my flowers. I'm very lightly, in a stroke-like motion, swiping my alcohol markers from the edge towards the center of the petals. I'm absolutely loving this technique of using alcohol markers. You will see the difference it gives. You can very easily compare the flower that has the shading as compared to those which doesn't. Well, I'm so sorry that at some point my camera stopped recording all of that shading technique. But I did the same exact thing for all of the flowers and the leaves. Once I was satisfied with all the colors and shadows, I then used the coordinating die to cut out this huge floral image. Next, I have two A2 size watercolor panels, which will be the backgrounds for our card today. Now I'm using watercolor panels because on both these backgrounds, we will be having some more fun with watercolors. I placed my panel on a microfiber cloth to catch all of that mess. For our first card background, I'll be creating a wood grain-like effect on our background. essentially creating a pattern paper look. For that, I started by applying a generous amount of water onto the entire panel. Then, using the very light shade of brown, I started adding color to my panel. I'm adding color in vertical strokes, making sure that I don't blend the color a lot. I would want each of those lines to stand out, which will give a lot more wood grain look. If you want a softer look, you could definitely blend all of those lines. I will be using my heat gun to dry the panel before adding more layers of color and strokes on these panels. If you want a more deeper wood grain look, I would recommend waiting for each of those layers to dry completely before adding new lines and strokes. I went in for a medium look, so there's not a lot of layering of colors happening here. Well, I'm really happy with the end result. I love how beautiful this panel turned out. I will now set it aside to dry completely while I work on our second card background. For background number two, we will be creating a watercolor drip effect, which I feel is a very organic way to add color to your card background. And well, there's no wrong way to do it. I will start by spraying almost 3/4 of our panel with water. I will saturate this end of the panel so that it will allow easy flow of the color down the panel. I chose bright blue and purple for this drip effect. All I did was touch the tip of the marker onto the water surface, and well, water and gravity did the magic. I held the paper upright so that the color and water could easily slide down the card panel, creating a beautiful trickle down effect. If you feel the color does not flow as you wanted it to, you could add some extra water using your paintbrush. I feel this drip technique would also be perfect to create a rainbow background. I would definitely give that a try in my next project. The bright and vibrant rainbow colors would blend beautifully with each other. Unlike the previous technique where I wanted to dry each of those layers before adding in a new layer, here I didn't have to wait for the color to dry before pouring in more of that beautiful vibrant color. Also, you will see the microfiber cloth catches all of that drip, which makes cleanup so much more easier. Now here's a side-by-side look of both the panels that we created today. It does look a lot messy right now, but the end product is absolutely stunning. I must say that the pictures also don't do justice to these cards. In real life, they're absolutely beautiful and vibrant. Now while my panels are drying, I'm just trying to see where and how I can place these focal point image to create beautiful card fronts. Also trying to figure out the orientation of these cards. While my panels were drying, I went ahead and cut my focal point image, which I was then able to place on each of those card fronts. I placed them using some foam tape for an extra dimension. I love the contrast between the yellow flowers and the blue background, and also beautiful florals which cover our wood grain background. Well, the wood grain background does look a little washed out. Probably next time when I give it a try, I would love to add more layers of lines and strokes of colors, or maybe even add some darker shades of browns to create a more contrast effect. But I do love this look too. Well, I'm definitely not done with my watercolors. I had to add some splatters to these beautiful backgrounds. I used gold metallic watercolors and some heavy drops of black watercolor on both these card fronts. Now, while those watercolor splatters dry, I worked on my sentiments. Now, I used the Big Hug sentiments from the same stamp set and stamped and heat embossed it using some gold embossing powder and die cut it using the coordinating dies. Well, I did stack up the sentiments. I added two extra die cuts to give it a more dimensional look. Then, using my liquid glue, I adhered both these sentiments onto the card front. Last but not the least, before adhering these panels onto a standard A2 size card base, I decided to add some highlights to our flowers. I'm using my white gel pen to add light strokes on our petals and leaves. Well, I'm not at all using a heavy hand on these strokes and very gently. Rather, I'm almost not touching the paper while I'm applying these strokes. That That is what I feel gives it a more natural look, which is not something I would do if I was highlighting, say, a critter or a bold sentiment or any other stamped image. Here I'm taking my time to work on each of those petals, adding very light highlights to each of them. I also added little dots on all of the flower centers using the white gel pen and covered up any of that ink, the alcohol ink, which was on the white embossed lines. Initially, when I started coloring these flowers, well, by the time I reached petal number 3 or 4, I was really not sure of what exactly I was trying to do. Really not confident with my coloring. But well, once I stuck the stamped image on those beautiful backgrounds, I think now I love these cards. And well, the white highlights was exactly what it needed. I love how these cards turned out. The colors here are so super vibrant. There's so much going on in both these cards. Not just that beautifully blended watercolors, but I am also really happy with the shadows that I created using the alcohol markers too. The white highlights and the watercolor splatters definitely add to the beauty of these cards. Well, I hope you had fun watching today's video. I sure did. Had a lot of fun creating these cards. Don't forget to check out my blog post where I'll have some more details about these projects. All the supplies that I used in today's video will be linked down in the description box below. Please know that all of these links are affiliate links, which means that if you shop using one of my links, I get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe.